So the last panel of the day is called From Titans to Trailblazers, Unmasking Web3's Investment Landscape with Corporate VC, Traditional VC, and Web3 VC, all on the same stage. So our speakers are Martin, Senior Director of Bertelsmann Investments, Stephen, General Partner at Karatage, Alban, Investor from Cathay Ledger Fund, and Mathijs, Partner at Maven 11, moderated by Andrew, previously from The Block. So please, for the last time, a big round of applause for this panel.
Very nice. Hi. Okay. Hold it up, guys. I'm Andrew. Very pleased to meet you all. Last session, last panel of the entire conference. It's been a long 2 days. Thanks for sticking with us. We will see you through to the end, and then you can head off to the bar. I'm going to start in the traditional way by asking everyone to introduce themselves. We've got 4 investors here. They come from 4 different corners of Europe. It's very exciting. They represent 4 different kinds of investors, but ultimately they're decision makers. They have their hands on the purse strings. You want to hear what they have to say. So let's start at the end and come back towards me. Introduce yourself. Tell people a bit about your credentials. And then I want to know a little bit more. I want to know, why did you start investing in crypto? Or Web3, or however you want to, I guess institutionally, not your own little bag. And then give us a couple of your most high-profile investments to date. I'd love to get a sense of that.
Sure. Thank you, first of all. My name is Martin. I work at Bertelsmann Investments. So for those of you who don't know, Bertelsmann is basically one of the largest media companies in Europe. And obviously, when you think about media, you're always automatically kind of speaking about content. You're automatically speaking about data. Then also our group is engaged in financial services and supply chain. And the way we perceive Web3 is not as an industry per se. It's more like an infrastructure layer that is at some point going to affect how business is done in the future and how it's already kind of being done. And we at Bertelsmann Investments, our funds have started investing in Web3 quite a while ago. We've seen investment activity picking up, I think, for the obvious reasons, because we realize that there is some value in this space. And what we are now doing is we are opening a Web3 hub that is really focusing on not only investing, but also understanding what the implications for doing business are for our division, for our different business units, and then help educating and advising and supporting our executive leadership to understand what the implications are and why they are relevant, so that at some point we can have some strategic insight and implications.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here. So I'm Alban Vendeuvre. I'm working in the Ledger Cathay Fund. So a few words on Ledger Cathay. I don't think that I have to explain what is Ledger, but maybe a few words on Cathay. So the Ledger Cathay Fund is the marriage between Ledger and the Cathay Innovation, which is a traditional VC investor. We have like a global venture fund, which is a 1 billion fund investing globally in tech. And Ledger and Cathay decided to do this fund together, dedicated to Web3. So it is a 100 million euro fund investing in seed and Series A globally. And thanks to Cathay and Ledger, we have, I would say, the best of the both worlds. So that's why they decided to join forces and created this fund. And on my side, so why I wanted to go on Web3 and why I'm so excited about Web3. Well, actually, I discovered crypto when I was in school. And then right after, during my first job, it was in a big corporate fund. We decided to create my own Euro stablecoin, and then I decided to become an entrepreneur. And right after 3 years, I decided to go on the investor side, and that's why I'm here today representing Ledger Cathay.
Hey everybody. Well, thanks for being here, and thanks to X Ventures for organizing. I'm Mathijs. I'm one of the partners at Maven 11. We are a crypto-only venture fund. We were founded in 2015. We're operating out of Amsterdam, and I myself joined in 2017 as an analyst back then. I got into crypto earlier on. I was selling some online digital items, and I used Ether to pay for it. Hence, I bought some, and I sort of rolled into it, fell down the rabbit hole with Augur, the prediction market protocol. Yeah, I've been doing crypto since then. As said, Maven 11 is a venture-only fund. I would say we're quite crypto-native. We do pre-seed up till Series A. And we're mostly known, I think, for our infrastructure investments. So that can be anything related to zero-knowledge proofs, modular blockchain networks like Celestia, or privacy tech like Nimtech or Anoma. Yeah, that's about it.
I won't ask what kind of items you were buying online when you got into Sorry, Stephen, Karen.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Mackintosh. I am a general partner at Karatage. Karatage is a proprietary hedge fund based out of London. We are quite significant investors across crypto, but also in 2 other areas such as quantum computing and cyber. We have over 35 kind of private investments. They range from exchanges like Gemini to gaming companies like Animoca, to ZK technologies like Alio, to payments like TipLink and Fung in Europe, right through to kind of sports betting and a host of other things in between. We're also an LP in 16 venture funds. They range from some really early stage pre-seed seed funds right through to kind of Series A funds such as Multicoin, Parify, Hypersphere, and a number of others. I got into crypto pretty early in 2017. Our first ever investment was actually as a pre-seed investor into Polkadot. So that was kind of the beginning of the space for us. Prior to that, I was in machine learning for 7 years. I ran a NLP company, natural language processing company, so similar to what ChatGPT is, that we sold to a NASDAQ-listed business.
Thank you very much. That's a great intro. As you can see, investors from 4 different countries, slightly different backgrounds, but they've all got money to spend. So that's why we want to hear what they have to say. So I'm going to go back to Alban for the first question. So this is an incredibly cyclical industry. It's a roller coaster. We've had boom times, we've had bust times. Like right now, we're in more of one of the bust times. What can this industry, what can crypto Web3 do to like draw more VC money into the space at this point in time?
Well, first of all, I agree we're like in a bad time for crypto, but I mean, where are the examples that for Web3 investments, like we have good times ahead of us? And if we take like some, it's not the same pace at 2021, but in 2022, the pace of investment was quite huge just for one vertical. Like if we take the example of AI, this was not the same case for Web3. So we have like many different verticals, and Web3 is, I would say, still one of the major ones. And but you're right. Like if we want to attract more investors in the Web3, I think we still have 3 main points to address. The first one is when we talk to LPs and when we want to attract more investors, like they are not really, they feel a bit threatened by what's happening in the industry. Like if we take the example of regulation, it's of course a big problem right now with the SEC and everything. It's a big turmoil for the industry. But I mean, for today, in the short term, it's not good for the industry. But in the long term, I'm sure that it will be very useful to have this clear regulation, and that will reassure the investors. The second one is, I think we still have to educate the investors. Like, I mean, if I take some example of my personal experience, it took me like several dinners to explain to my parents what was blockchain, what was crypto. When we talk between each other, like when we talk about address, private keys, it's like normal for us, but if you remember like 5-6 years ago when you learned what was blockchain, it was like, what was this? So we have to explain, and this is why, for example, Ledger created Ledger Academy, exactly for this kind of, to educate people and to understand what is the blockchain, the power of blockchain, and what Web3 can really bring to many verticals. And the last one is, in my opinion, and this is why I like this job, is we don't have, apart from crypto and trading, real use cases that talk to everybody. Like, for example, I would love to have more projects that can tell me, well, I will help you buy a house, contract a loan. I will help you, for example, send some money very easily to my family in other countries. If we have like real life use cases that help everybody, I think if we have this proven track record, it will help us to attract more money and more investors in the industry.
I guess that's the key point. Like, you don't have money to invest unless you attract those LPs. So, like, presumably, the mood music now that you're hearing from potential investors in your funds is sour compared with a year or two ago. I mean, are there people out there who are like willing to open their pocketbooks and invest in your funds?
Well, you said the people that already invested
your
in
LPs.
our fund. Yeah, the objective for them, we have different LPs in our fund. We have corporates, we have family offices. For the corporates, the objective when they decide to invest in a Web3 fund is to learn, basically. They want to learn, they want to... we are showing them some startups, some projects. So this is just a way for them to learn what is Web3 actually and how they can maybe use it in their verticals. I mean, maybe Bertelsmann, it is exactly the case for them. If they are going in Web3, maybe it's to use it in media. So, I mean, for LPs, this is really the objective, besides, of course, to have like profit on the investment.
So yeah, let's go to Martin. Like, you're here to represent the corporate VC world. Like, what's the interest there at the moment, and do you see it improving? What can this industry do to attract more money from the corporate people?
So I think that's a very important question. So I think the question the industry needs to ask itself is, why would a corporate player that is making substantial profits in the existing legacy system decide to shift towards an alternative that is very counterintuitive to everything the Web2 world is based on, right? So some of the most substantial business functions actually result out of the fact that you are operating as an intermediary, for example. That you are verifying transactions in some shape or form, that you're making sure that a certain component of trust is established. So for a corporate investor, ultimately the question always is there any potential disruption coming from a certain technological layer to what we are doing right now? This is question number one. And how substantial is this disruption actually going to be on our existing profit pools? And then the second question is there any new business, additional value creation or value capturing that can occur from us looking into this technology? And I think still the industry is not necessarily doing enough on the side of this narrative. So when we invest, basically, specifically when we're looking into funds, what we are doing is we're partnering with funds that help us on this journey, because it's a very, very long journey, and it's a journey where you're kind of fighting against windmills in a sense, right? So trying to explain to executives, first of all, getting their time is very, very difficult because they have substantial responsibility over the current business they are running. And then secondly, when you come with very vague hypotheses on how the future of the internet is going to affect their business, you will lose their attention right away. So it is very important to be as concrete as possible. And then ultimately, I would say, for a corporate, and this is the approach that we are taking, you need to have skin in the game, yes, but at the same time, exploration right now is really at the center of a strategy. Maybe it is a strategy in and of itself, you know, because it is a process, and it's not about investing now, losing a lot of money, and then kind of forgetting about the space and then being surprised once the space is ready to actually transform what is going on. The ambition must be to be prepared and to identify the value drivers in this space. And I think this is a very challenging task, and that task really requires patience, and it requires very strong partners that understand the industry, and then people that are capable of translating that to what is relevant right now and operationally tomorrow.
And Andrew, I also think it's relevant to maybe differentiate between the types of corporates, right? So for instance, a lot of market makers, which are also large corporations, have been heavily investing in crypto, likes of Jump, Flow Traders, Chain Street, because they sort of saw themselves being disrupted by, well, it's in the name, right? An AMM, an automated market maker, and they just start investing like, hey, can this disrupt us? And we need to pay attention now. And I think it's cool to see that something like a media company is now also allocating time and resources to this. So as we reach more verticals, I imagine more corporations out of different industries will start looking into this space more and more.
Yeah, 100%. And I think we also need to be a bit more realistic about how many people are actually using the technology right now. So we have like 200 million active wallets globally, which sounds very impressive. But then if you look at monthly active users, then you're immediately down to, let's say, 10 to 15 million at the max, right? So while we are all very convinced that this is going to change, and I 100% believe in that, still you need to be very careful on how you are actually presenting these topics to the executive management, because otherwise it will be very, very difficult to build a credible positioning to the inside and also to the outside. Yeah.
So I'm going to come to Stephen. When I look at my social feed, to be honest, there's been a shift in the past few months. ChatGPT is taking over. Crypto is not perhaps the darling that it was in the heady lockdown days of 2020, 2021, when everyone wanted to trade random shitcoins. AI is the elephant in the room here. Is that sucking the oxygen away from VC investing in the crypto space? Like, how do you view this? I mean, you're someone who invests across the crypto world and other sectors, so I'm curious to get your take on it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I also spent like a large part of my career in AI, in specifically NLP. So seeing crypto Twitter become distracted with AI is kind of like the play to earn kind of craze in 2021. It's a bit of a herd trade. I think some people have just worked out what AI was like 6 months ago and are now putting like 50 tweet threads about it every week. So, whether they're the best people to listen to on the subject of AI, I would kind of question that one. I think to answer your question, yes, there has been obviously attention stolen away from crypto's value potential, right? Because AI's moment has kind of finally happened. It is an astonishing kind of breakthrough, what's going on with ChatGPT. And I think that it's really captivated, the world's imagination about what's possible. But a lot of this has been building for a while, right? If you were in the industry, you were kind of aware of these kind of, these transformer models and what they were pushing towards. I think it's definitely kind of opened up the kind of entrepreneurial space, because now you're seeing, loads of really kind of thoughtful young people trying to build in this wave of innovation, which is exciting. I think that's a bit of a risk because, ultimately crypto does need really great developers to build around ecosystems. Like ultimately that's what you need to kind of scale these L1s or L2s. You need people building around that ecosystem. So that's definitely a bit of a risk. I think on the investor side, I think there are definitely like a few kind of individuals or teams on the VC side who are probably going to get locked in another herd trade by following, the direction of travel on Twitter and probably kind of backing stuff that they don't really understand. That's, not very defensible and is probably a bit overvalued, to be honest. That's definitely going to happen. But I think that's part and parcel of a hype cycle, right? I think one thing I would say about how kind of I think AI and crypto are linked is that the philosophy of crypto is the progressive realization of open source technology for the world and democratizing access, right? And I think that in the future, it doesn't make sense to have only two entities in the world that can run huge multi-model learning systems like OpenAI and DeepMind. And that's purely a function of the compute infrastructure they have. So there are these really interesting conversations going on about distributed compute and other kind of adjacent innovation areas around the kind of crypto and AI conversation. The only problem with that is it's a bit like taking a water gun to a machine gun fight. You need like insane, supercomputers to run this stuff. But I'm a big believer in open source technology. I think open source models are going to be a big part of the future because, like I said, it doesn't make sense to have two entities controlling everything. And I think crypto will dovetail into that in some sense. I think it's hard to spot yet where it will manifest in real terms, but I think that directionally they're linked. And yeah, I think, in the day-to-day, I think that, crypto investors who've been crypto investors for a few years should still want to invest in crypto because it's still an important thing to do and there's still a lot of value to be created. So yeah, I think a few tourists will get on the train and follow the AI hype wagon, but hopefully the real ones, like these guys, will stay in the day-to-day business.
You want to comment on that?
Yeah, I mean, we had a discussion yesterday during dinner, and I think what is very interesting is that I personally believe VCs that are now pivoting away from crypto, focusing on AI, are actually making a huge mistake, because we've been always talking about the super use case for Web3 and the super use case for crypto, and I personally believe that generative AI is actually posing a problem and a challenge that is so substantial that only Web3 can solve, which is basically provenance to digital assets in a world where every piece of content can be altered, can be multiplied, can be sent from A to B, which is extremely dangerous from an intellectual property perspective. And what you need for that is actually an infrastructure layer in which data and content are assets that are actually trackable and traceable and that have a history, right? And this is for me the biggest value proposition and the biggest problem that we've seen so far, probably, that this industry can solve. And
well, when all content is digital, you own Penguin, Random House Publishing, right? When all content is digital in the future, you will want to have a way to enforce the provenance of that content.
Yeah. Exactly that. And the same is true for user-generated content. I remember Lex yesterday was talking about avatars and you basically wanting to make sure that a copy of yourself is actually a copy of yourself and not abused by any third party in the internet for other purposes. This is something that the blockchain infrastructure, that Web3 can lay out to solve, and I think VCs also should actually focus on solving that problems instead of, as you said, trying to become experts in a domain that never has been their field of expertise.
I think one other thing as well, just to add, which is slightly kind of left of center, but I think Apple have done a really great job of being leaders of privacy-first technology, and what they've done recently with kind of the new iOS updates, where you can have the keys to your own iCloud, kind of like not your keys, not your data, and then also what they've done with gaming publishers and kind of allowing the user to get sovereignty over their personal data and not have that shared has completely changed the fee model of mobile gaming. You're talking of like a $40 billion dollars a year industry getting wiped in half basically since those changes have come about. And what is that? Why am I bringing that up? Why is it relevant? Well, the internet as we know it was built in a certain way over the past 20 years, and I think it wasn't built with like the user sovereignty in mind, and we're seeing increasingly really meaningful strides towards each individual on the internet having sovereignty of their data and their privacy, and Apple's been a big leader of that. Now, I do think that these kind of big seismic shifts all do converge at some point, kind of digital property rights on the internet, open source software, privacy-first technology, they are coming together.
100%.
It is, from an investor's point of view, is it actually somewhat of a relief that maybe the heat's not there in the crypto market like it was a couple of years ago? Like, does it actually put more weight in your hands in those kind of negotiations between entrepreneur and investor? Like, you're not having to pay the insane valuations of a couple of years ago. Is it less sweat on your brow?
Yeah, of course. I mean, in 2021, you had funding rounds close within a week or a day even, and you had the opportunity to do one call and you just had to say like, okay, I'm in or out. Now that's way more fun because you get to engage with these entrepreneurs and talk to them a few times, challenge them on the business models. It's not like it's entirely shifted like, hey, the VCs have all the power over founders. Strong founders will get funding, but it is more an equal field. And I think that's actually good for everybody around the table.
I'm going to stay with Mathijs. We've addressed one elephant in the room, the AI elephant. I want to address the regulation elephant as well, if that's not a bizarre metaphor. So why would anyone want to invest right now in an industry that some of the biggest companies are being actively sued and pursued by the SEC and other regulators around the world, particularly in the US?
Yeah, I mean, why they want to invest, I still think there are very interesting opportunities and returns to be made. And on regulatory landscape specifically, I think everybody in the industry just wants clarity at this point, right? I can't comment on how the SEC is going to evolve, etc. I don't know enough about that, to be frank. But I've yet to meet a founder who's like, hey, I don't want to be compliant. It's more like, I want to be compliant. How can I do that? And now in the European Union, we have MiCA. I don't agree with like every point in there, but it is something. And it's clarity for everybody in the industry. And I think that's a big step forward. And to be frank, I think that's what also the US founders are all just hoping for. Like, hey, tell me what to do, and I'll do it, right?
I'm curious, like, does it change your geographical outlook? Are US-based companies less attractive now versus 6, 12 months ago?
Can't release a token in the US.
Yeah. No, yeah, of course that impacts it. Yeah, we do, but we have taken that into account. Like a DeFi project out of the US is just, you can't underwrite that right now, or it's hard.
And you have some projects coming to Canada, but it's like fresh news, but maybe it's going to be more developed.
All right, talking about that then, Canada. Generally, let's go broad then, Alban. Well, like, where are you seeing the investment opportunities out there? Like, what's exciting at the moment, geographically, sector-wise, use cases?
We were talking just before about AI and how Web3 could solve the problem of AI. I think one of the technology which is very interesting, and we just talked about it just before, is like zero knowledge and how you can prove everything that you can do without revealing privacy. So we can imagine that we will have like proof of authenticity for AI, but we can have other use cases relying on their knowledge. So for example, proof of identity, proof of payment, proof of subscription, proof of authority. So everything related to zero knowledge can solve a lot of problem and can enhance many verticals to have this kind of proof linked to the blockchain. This is one. The second is in the creator economy. I think there is a lot of noise around it, like how you can enhance, how you can better incentivize your users as a creator, how you can have better linked with your creators, token gating, everything related, how you can monetize your users, what you can do with your brand, and of course how you can raise more capital, maybe thanks to DeFi, if you are a creator. And the last one, which is one of my favorites, is how you can leverage the DeFi protocols in order to have products that answer to real needs at first for firms. So for example, you can use DeFi protocols to create like credits, factoring, and it will enhance a lot of business to have access to capital thanks to DeFi protocols. And you can imagine the same for the retail side. So for example, if you want to buy a house, you can have a loan thanks, and you will not have to have like 100,000 Ether in order to have it for a collateral. So we can imagine a lot of things thanks to DeFi protocols that can really be used in the real life for businesses or for people.
Talking about being used for people, I was having a slightly drunken conversation over dinner last night with a woman who was ranting a little bit about how insular crypto is an industry. I mean, we are quite inward looking, I have to say. So I want to open up to the group now. Like, what kind of exciting entrepreneurs, startups are you coming across at the moment that have the ability to open that out, to talk to people outside of crypto who are going to develop things that your parents might want to use, that your cousin who has no interest in buying a random token wants to use? Like, anyone out there who's come across anything in that vein that's got a wider remit?
Yeah, I think one big development there, and we are also a fund that's very much in looking, right? We talk about MEV, zero knowledge proofs, etc. And I don't think a lot of end users actually care about that shit. But one big development is like account abstraction, right? That abstracts away like the approval of smart contracts, the paying of fees, the endless sort of things you need to do before you interact with the chain.
The friction.
Yeah, it's friction. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, and I think there are a lot of companies doing that. I think since like January, you've seen over 8 pitch trials or something. But any of these who just make the user onboarding and the user experience way more smoother, I think are very big in this area.
Well, there's a really cool company in the US called TipLink. And when I met the founder at an event, he was working at a large kind of institutional market making company. Very kind of smart young guy. He said basically, how have all of the Web2 kind of consumer apps and fintech apps, how did they scale initially when they were first launched? I was thinking about the question for a while. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, what was the device they used, the mechanism they used to onboard people? And it was links. It was social sharing. Remember when you had Monzo or Uber and you'd refer a friend, get a credit? So these guys have basically built a product called TipLink, which allows anyone with a link to basically receive crypto without having a DeFi wallet already. And you can actually then, because of an integration with like Plaid in the US, you can actually take that out into your own account. So that's super cool. Stuff like that, in addition to the account abstraction, just removes the friction and allows, more importantly, games, protocols, businesses to scale that kind of marketing push, really.
So it's almost like airdropping someone tokens before they even have a wallet. That's interesting. Yeah.
Exactly. You don't need a wallet to receive something. That's, I think, an important thing.
down the other end? Any thoughts on this topic?
I think what is going to be particularly important going forward is that you build the right incentive mechanisms for people to actually go into the space. I think there are some very interesting startups that are doing that. Because that makes it then easy to explain to, let's say, your parents or whoever you want to talk to that has nothing to do with it. I think one company was speaking here today, it was Ethermail, which basically provides an entirely new approach to email, and not only to email, but also to the fact that for basically receiving any type of advertisement, in a sense, you will be rewarded as the user of the platform. So it's kind of turning around the entire model on the basis of which advertisement was built, where basically you as the consumer, you are the product, right? And Web3 gives you the opportunity to switch that around, making you, or giving you as a consumer a more powerful position. And this is something that I think is particularly interesting, because when people are rewarded for participating in these kinds of ecosystems, then they will be open to actually try them out. They will also be open to take, let's say, the small pain of downloading a wallet or whatever is necessary. But I agree, the easier it is to onboard people, the easier it will be to reach a critical mass at some point. And I think we're seeing a lot of progress on that in different fields.
I think just one thing to add is that we're all from different places, and we all have kind of, let's say, traditional bank accounts that are domiciled where we live, right? If I wanted to transfer money to any of you now using traditional banking rails, it'd take quite a while. And like, say we go for a beer afterwards and we want to share it or whatever, you could just do that straight away through crypto rails, through USDC or whatever. And I think, going back to where we started with Bitcoin, like payments is still like a mega use case, and I think it's gonna. If you look around emerging markets like in Africa and Southeast Asia, people are using crypto for that main reason. I think that is still the killer use case. So the more and more, PayPal have recently allowed users to. They've got 400 million, I think, registered users on their network. You can now send Ethereum and other kind of crypto payment instruments across to other people, outside of the PayPal network. But that's really cool because it onboards just another, latent user base. So those 400 million accounts could then start, purchasing some crypto to go and take part in a game or buy an NFT or whatever, right? That's cool.
Also, if you think about just the numbers and the magnitude of this market, I think, don't quote me on this, but I think like 11% of the GDP of the Philippines is remittance. So just think about that. I mean, basically, this is an entire industry. I mean, of course, there's regulation preventing that going forward, but this is an entirely multi-trillion-dollar industry that is potentially being disrupted right now. And technologically, it's feasible already. So if anyone is doubting the actual value that can be captured from this technology, there are some real-life examples that are actually being used all the time. Yeah.
Yeah, we pay a lot of our seed rounds in USDC, so it works very smoothly. Yeah.
Did I see you lift your mic, Alban, or not? No.
No, I was thinking, but if I pay you a beer, I would prefer to pay you in stablecoin instead of Ether. Yeah, we have to foster this kind of innovation, because if you want to do remittance, for example, we'll have to foster like stablecoins in every fiat countries where they want to have this. So, for example, in African countries, you will have to create stablecoins for each fiat of each country in order to foster this kind of remittances and payment rails between countries.
Okay, let's talk about the European scene. We're here in Paris, so 4 different European countries represented here. How is the future of Europe when it comes to crypto investing, Stephen? Like, what's your take on it?
I think it's a golden opportunity for everyone in Europe, actually. There's obviously some kind of regulatory clarity. Andreessen Horowitz just done this really curated press release with Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister of the UK, which obviously was extremely strategic and didn't just happen overnight. And so, yeah, I think the outlook's really good. I think that there've always been kind of great engineers in Europe that maybe have not had the same access to capital that you would have in like the West Coast of America. And hopefully, some of those teams and individuals might get a better chance to get funded now that I think there's a real kind of a real focus on investors to come to Europe to kind of invest in companies, and for teams, more importantly, to launch businesses here. And I think, I think the Mika thing that you mentioned before is massive. I think Europe could be an institutional trading center for crypto potentially. It's going to be competing against like Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, but that's there for the taking. And we're in Paris. I remember in 2014 to 2017, London did a great job at like promoting itself as a tech city, and then kind of just stopped. It was like called Silicon Roundabout and Old Street.
Maybe something happened in 2016 to distract people.
Exactly.
I don't know, like
Brexit, bombed everything for us, right? But I mean, they did a great job at promoting, tech London as a concept, and then Paris kind of took that baton and ran with it. Really, I think Paris is, the French have done an incredible job at promoting French tech and French engineering as a real kind of force multiplier in the global economy. And there's Viva Tech on, there's this great conference here, and there's many other things happening in Paris, Station F, which are really cool. So, I think the opportunity for Europe as a whole is massive. I still consider myself, European despite Brexit, thank God. So London's got a great opportunity. Europe's got a great opportunity.
From the continent, what's the take? What are the bright spots in Europe? Is it all just about the crackdown in the US, like pushing people out, or are there like more pull factors that people can jump on over this side of the Atlantic?
No, I think more the missing piece that we maybe have in Europe is a lot of capital for like later stage companies, right? In the US, I think you can name 10 crypto funds that have raised well over $1 billion. In Europe, that's just way harder and not really happening. I'm also talking a little bit my own book here, of course, but...
one of them is an AI fund now.
Yeah, 9 crypto funds, 1 AI fund. So I think that's definitely missing. What is nice to see in Europe is that you have a lot of these crypto hubs, right? Lisbon, Paris, Berlin, London still is. So that's quite nice to see. It's sort of decentralized already, the activity.
Most of the companies that we receive at the deal floor, I'm speaking for myself, but we can see that a lot of firms are in the early stage companies, like they're searching for seed, pre-seed, Series A, maybe. So I think it's a sign that there is a lot of European companies trying to build in Web3. So this is really a sign of good health, I think, to have these kind of companies multiplying in Europe. And I agree with you, like for later stage companies, they prefer to go on with US funds. It's always the same. But for early stage companies, I think we have a very, very good environment in Europe.
Okay, Martin, I want to come back to the corporate VC world here. When you're pitching to your internal builders at Bertelsmann, what is it that reaches them? Like, is it? I'm guessing that they don't particularly care about the tech that underpins all of this. Is it really the use case? Is it really saying like we can do something faster, cheaper, better? Like, talk me through that process. Like, what resonates with the people you're pitching to internally?
So interestingly, I mean, we are not actively pitching startups from our portfolio right now. For the, let's say there is an exception, of course, if there's like something that we consider a perfect fit, then yes, we're doing that. But what they really are keen to understand is the business implication, as I just indicated before. And at the moment, I think it is really a process, and I think it's going to take at least one more year, maybe 1.5, to really unravel the new business paradigm. So what we are doing, for instance, is we take the experiences we connect from our fund investments. We've invested in Greenfield, for instance, in Europe, has been a very, very good partner for us. Our funds have invested directly in the US and in Asia. We've spoken to many very, very good funds on the continent, also to Maven 11. We've spoken to Cathay, and we learn from these people. And what we are learning is not only how to kind of evaluate and look at these types of Web3 companies. What we're learning is the actual types of businesses that are relevant to what we are doing right now. And I think what we will be doing going forward, and I think this is going to be the door opener for more concrete activities, is translate what we're seeing into educational output. And then we are taking the time to sit down for an hour and a half, do a workshop with the leadership of specific business units, specific divisions, and explain to them what this technology actually means. So this narrative of it being an infrastructure layer, for everyone here participating at this conference, it's absolutely obvious. You don't need to tell anyone. But I think in the corporate Web2 world, it is really something that needs to be explained. And it needs to be explained why it is an infrastructure layer and how it functions technically. Not in detail, but they need to understand that there is a logic behind it. And once once you can kind of disseminate this type of knowledge, and that only works when you see what is happening in the startup ecosystems, when you see what is being built at the moment, when you see how this is getting traction, then you are kind of laying, let's say, fertile grounds for further activities. So this is, I think, the focus. It is really not about concrete projects. It's really about learning and understanding.
I just think to that point, right, you're in Germany and you talk about infrastructure and education. You know, Ethereum's like 7 years old. And you know, it originally had like loads of cypherpunks in Germany who were building on Bitcoin and building on Ethereum. And now you're like a corporate, you know, media giant talking about, you know, building Web3 into your business lines. I mean, just think about what's been accomplished in that short period of time. It's not that long, really. And you know, on the subject of infrastructure, you know, the Maven 11 guys are amazing at this in terms of their research and their investments. But you know, the stack's still getting rebuilt right now, whether it's modular blockchains, monolithic blockchains, you know, whether it's, you know, you can't really have like only an EVM world. I don't think that's good for the industry. You want to have alternatives. And, you know, there's a company that, you know, I've co-invested in with Maven, which is, you know, taking on Flashbots, and they're building something really exciting. There's just, you know, new companies that are still building at the kind of the infrastructure level. And I think that's going to really kind of transform a lot of our current like doubts about use cases and utility on the blockchain. You know, you're gonna get new quantums of scale. You're gonna get different varied use cases. You know, I think the infrastructure space is still, you know, really gonna quite exciting and gonna transform in the next few years.
Absolutely, and I think, and this might sound a bit polemic, but ultimately this is the only thing that actually resonates with executives, obviously, is you need to explain to them, look, like this is a technology that might, in a given amount of time, we don't know how long, entirely disrupt everything we are doing here. And the ambition that every large media company should have at the moment, from my personal point of view, and the same is true obviously for the financial services realm, the same is true for supply chain, but specifically about media, the ambition must be that in Web3, the content that you own, the IP that you're owning, it shouldn't be outsourced to platforms like Netflix and Spotify. You should own these platforms as part of your IP. And I think only if you can explain to executives on a very, very high level why that technology is actually providing this new window of opportunity for such types of companies to come out of this new infrastructure layer, only then there will be substantial awareness. And I think our leadership at Bertelsmann Investments particularly has done a great job to quite early understand it. And I would even go so far to say, because it's not the only initiative we have a tech and data team at Bertelsmann that has been looking into this in detail. They have established many different formats, educating everybody in the group. Everybody has been working together on this. I think we are quite early. But you cannot be early enough on this topic, and also it's not only about being early, it is about actually sticking to it, because it's going to take at least 2 to 3 years before we're seeing some substantial operational relevance for this, but I'm sure it will happen.
Yeah, one thing that I find interesting is that you say you have to own your platform, right? Now you have on Reddit all these blackouts going on of all the subreddits, because there's like a centralized entity who owns Reddit and they're shutting down the API. In a way, that reminds me a little bit of why Buterin founded Ethereum in the first place. His Warlock got nerfed on World of Warcraft, I think, and he was like, oh no, I don't want this to happen, I'm going to start Ethereum. So one thing I'm keeping an eye on is like people who now visit Reddit a lot and are like, hey, shit, there's a centralized company who controls my sort of daily consumption of internet content. Let's try and decentralize that in some way. I don't know exactly how, that's up to the amazing founders, right? But that's something I definitely want to see more of.
Yeah, that would be a good pitch story, the new Vitaliks coming through, the 19-year-olds who've been like kicked out of their favorite subreddit, and now they're going to take revenge on the world by starting a whole company. And yeah, okay, I want to see that.
I would love to meet those.
If you're out there, yeah. All right, we haven't got long left. Maybe last question, I'll stick with Mathijs. I mean, in the spirit again of talking to the world outside of crypto, you're here to represent the more crypto native venture capital investor. What do you want to see from those people who aren't yet crypto converts? What can they bring to the party at this point? It's slightly a tricky question, but I'm curious to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think I sort of just explained it, right? The subreddit stuff. Another sort of use case that you can easily pitch to people who are not into crypto is a company we backed, it's called Nimtech. What they do is like basically a VPN And I think a lot of people use a VPN on a daily basis, and then there's a crypto element to it where you get incentivized to be part of the network. I think these sort of simple replacements of Web2 use cases are what you need to pitch first. I doubt, again, that my family will want to hear me talk with Steven about MEV a little bit more and how it impacts block building, etc.
So it's all about having a broader perspective, I guess, getting away from the jargon and the trading.
Keeping it a little bit easy. You said you needed a few dinners with your parents to explain what we do. Ideally, we would get that down to like 5 minutes. I think that's already a big help.
Talking about getting down to 5 minutes, I think we're nearly at the end. Any final thoughts? Any final pitches you want to go? You know, anyone you want to particularly meet? Anyone you want to have a beer with afterwards? I don't know. Like who should be coming up to you and buttonholing you after this event?
Anyone who is interested in talking to us, I would say. I mean, I think at this point everybody can learn from everyone, and happy to exchange. We are here. We are very interested in learning what is going on. And of course, we are very, very interested in also making the connections relevant for the crypto companies to actually talk to where the adoption is at the moment. So, yeah.
People with strong opinions on why things don't work. That's about it.
That's a good way to end it. Thank you very much. This has been a great panel. I've enjoyed it. I hope you have too. It's been a good conference. Go grab a glass of wine or something, and we'll see you around. Thank you.
Thank you.